I stopped hearing my own footsteps 20 minutes into Blackwater Trail in West Virginia, and that's when I knew something was hunting me in the silence. It was late January 2024, and I'd come to the New River Gorge to escape my failures. Lost job, broken relationship, the usual collapse. The ranger in Fayetteville had given me a strange look when I mentioned Blackwater Trail. He paused, pen hovering over the permit, and asked if I'd considered the main trails instead. I wanted isolation. He signed without another word, but watched me through the window as I left. The trailhead was just a gap in the trees. Within minutes, the forest swallowed me whole. Hemlock and oak pressed in, branches bare against a ceiling of gray sky. An hour in, I noticed the silence. No birds, number, wind, no sounds at all. Just my boots on frozen ground. Then gradually, even those sounds began fading, like the forest was absorbing them. Before we begin, please consider subscribing and don't forget to like the video. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Your support truly means everything. Now, let's start. I stopped and stamped my foot. The sound was muffled, distant, like I was underwater. I clapped my hands. Same thing. My pulse climbed. I checked my phone. No signal, but the time was wrong. It showed 3:47 p.m. My watch said 1:15. I'd only been hiking an hour. The discrepancy sat in my stomach like a stone. The trail descended into a hollow where I found the first cairn. Stones stacked in a spiral pattern that hurt to look at. Tucked between them was a piece of faded red cloth, knotted deliberately. I didn't touch it. Over the next mile, I found 6 more cairns, each larger than the last. By the 7th, I couldn't hear my heartbeat anymore. Couldn't hear blood in my ears. The world had become perfectly, impossibly quiet. That's when I heard the whispers. They weren't coming from any direction. They were just there, inside the silence, overlapping and twisting. Together. Underneath them was something deeper, rhythmic and wet, like something massive breathing in the hollow beneath my feet. I ran, but the trail had changed. The cairns were gone. The path forked into identical branches. I took turns blindly, each choice feeling random and inevitable. The light was dying fast. My phone still showed 3:47. I found the cabin just as darkness fell. Smoke rose from the chimney. The door was unlocked. Inside, a fire burned in the hearth. The walls were covered in photographs, hundreds of them. Black and white images of people on the same trail, all staring at the camera with expressions of desperate relief. Each photo had a date: 1987, 1993, 2001, 2015. The most recent was dated January 17, 2024. 8 days ago, a young woman stood at the 7th cairn, mouth open in a silent scream, eyes completely black. I'm writing this from the cabin now. It's been 3 days according to my watch, but my phone still says 3:47. The fire never goes out. When I try to leave, I find myself back in the clearing, looking at the cabin, the door open, the fire burning. Sometimes I hear footsteps outside. I want to warn them away, but my voice makes no sound here. The hollow is listening. It's always been listening. Every 8 years, someone walks down Blackwater Trail, following the cairns, until they end up here, adding one more photograph to the walls, one more voice to the whispers, waiting for the next person who wants to disappear. The old woman at the gas station in Grundy, Virginia told me not to answer the door after midnight on Route 83. but I'd been driving 14 hours straight and wasn't thinking clearly. February in Southwest Virginia. Moving cross-country from Seattle to Atlanta. An ice storm forced me onto back roads that seemed to exist outside any map. The GPS quit near Cumberland Gap. The gas station was ancient cinder block bathroom key attached to a chunk of 2B4. The woman behind the counter was maybe 70. Watching me with eyes that had seen too much. I asked about motels. She said there was the Pinewood Lodge, 9 miles up, but I should get there before dark. When I asked why, she leaned forward. If someone knocks after midnight, don't answer. Don't even look through the peephole. Just pretend you're asleep. I must have looked skeptical. She shrugged. Suit yourself. Just remember I told you. I reached the Pinewood Lodge at sunset. Horseshoe of units around a gravel lot, flickering neon sign reading VA Unsee. The clerk, maybe 19, barely looked up as he slid me a key. Room 7, at the far end against the tree line. The room was what you'd expect for $40. Thin walls, sagging bed, rust-stained tub. But it was warm. I fell asleep in my clothes. The first knock came at 12:13 a.m. 3 sharp raps, evenly spaced. I woke disoriented. Probably the front desk, I thought. Maybe I'd left something. I was halfway to the door when I remembered the gas station woman's warning. I stopped. Who is it? No answer. Just silence. Then 3 more knocks. Same rhythm. Knock. Pause. Knock. Pause. Knock. I looked through the peephole. The walkway was empty. No one there. Nothing. I backed away, sat on the bed, told myself it was nothing. Sound carrying from another unit. Then the knocking moved to the window. Same pattern, deliberate and patient. Then it traveled along the wall, past the first window, continuing around the building. It reached the far window looking toward the forest and knocked 3 times there. Then silence. It was 12:31. I waited, barely breathing. Nothing moved. Then I Googled knocking motel Virginia. Most results were ghost stories, but one caught my eye. A Bristol Herald Courier article from 2019. Missing travelers. 5-year mystery deepens. 7 people over 5 years, all from motels along Route 83. Last seen checking in. By morning, gone. Vehicles still parked, belongings left behind. One witness mentioned hearing knocking throughout the night. The woman in the next unit had disappeared by morning. The knocking started again at 1:04. This time, I heard something underneath it. Fingernails dragging across wood. Knock, scray ape, knock, scray ape. It circled my entire unit. I pulled the curtain aside slightly. The parking lot was empty except for my car and a rusted pickup 3 units down. Then I saw movement in the trees. Something pale, human height, swaying between the trunks. It flowed rather than walked, shifting positions without crossing the distance. It moved closer, stopping at the tree line directly across from my window. The knocking stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard only my ragged breathing. The pale shape stood motionless. Then it raised what might have been an arm and knocked 3 times on empty air. The sound came from my door. I locked myself in the bathroom, sat in the tub with the shower curtain pulled around me. I called 911. No service. At some point I passed out. When I woke, gray morning light filled the bathroom. I opened the door. The room looked normal. Door still locked, windows intact. I looked through the peephole. The parking lot was empty except my car. The pickup was gone. Then I saw the marks. Long scratches circled the exterior of Unit 7. about 7 feet off the ground, too high for any animal. Deep gouges in the wood siding, fresh and pale. I got in my car and drove. 3 weeks later, the Bristol Herald-Courier ran another article. 8th disappearance on Route 83. Truck driver missing from Pinewood Lodge. The photo showed Unit 7 with police tape. The driver had checked in Sunday night. His rig was still there Monday morning, but he was gone. A clerk reported seeing someone walking through the lot around 1 a.m. When asked to describe them, the clerk went silent and quit the next day. Sometimes, late at night in my Atlanta apartment, I hear that 3-knock pattern on my windows. Miles. From Virginia. Always rhythmic. Always patient. Knock. Pause. Knock. Pause. Knock. I never answer. I never will. But I know it's still looking, and one night, I'm afraid I'll forget to lock the door. The census taker who came to our Kentucky holler in March 2020 wasn't real, but by the time we figured that out, 3 people had already disappeared. Our holler's just a scatter of houses along a nameless creek, 40 miles southeast of Hazard. Maybe 40 people total. We're the kind of place governments forget, which suits us fine. So when the census takers showed up in early March, right as COVID was shutting everything down, my mama was immediately suspicious. He looked official. Government sedan, clipboard, laminated ID, maybe 50, neat khakis, and button down, clean shaven. Everything, said federal employee. David Kirscher from the Census Bureau, conducting the 2020 count in rural areas. Mama asked for his ID. He held it out without hesitation. It looked real, but something bothered her. Later, she said it was his shoes. Too clean for someone walking our muddy roads. She answered his questions anyway. Names, ages, how long we'd lived here. He wrote everything in neat handwriting and left. 2 days later, Doreen Messer's husband came looking for her. She'd gone to check on her sister over the ridge and never arrived. Search parties found nothing. Her car was in the driveway. Phone on the counter. She'd walked out her door and vanished. 3 days later, Billy Carpenter disappeared. Went out to split firewood at noon. His wife called him for lunch at 1. The axe was stuck mid-swing in the chopping block. His coat hung on the porch. Billy was 6'3", 250. Not easy to grab, but he was gone. Thursday morning, Tommy Ratliff's daughter Amber didn't show up for breakfast. Empty bed, window open, screen removed. Tommy drove straight to our house, white-faced. The census man visited us yesterday. He talked to Amber, wrote down her name and age. We called the sheriff. He sent Deputy Collins, who took statements and said he'd verify with the Census Bureau. 2 hours later, Collins called back. No David Kershaw, no door-to-door surveys because of COVID. Whoever he was, he didn't work for the government. We gathered at the community center that night. Tommy told everyone about the visits, the pattern. Then someone mentioned the census man had asked an extra question at their house. He wanted to know if anyone in my family had died in these hills. The room went quiet. He asked me that too. Mrs. Henderson said, about my husband who died in a mine cave-in 1998. My stomach dropped. He'd asked Mama about my dad, who'd fallen into an old mine shaft 7 years ago. He's not counting us, someone said. He's looking for people with connections to deaths in these mountains. Doreen's brother had died in a logging accident. Billy's first wife had disappeared in these hills 30 years ago. Amber's grandfather died in a mine collapse. Every missing person had lost someone to the mountains. and the census man had known. We split up to search for his car. Sarah Combs found it on Timber Ridge. Government sedan parked in a clearing. Doors unlocked, keys in the ignition. Empty. The census clipboard sat on the passenger seat. Tommy picked it up. The pages showed all our information, but the last page was different. A list. Doreen Messer, Billy Carpenter, Amber Ratliff. Below those, 7 more names, including Mama's and Tommy's wife Grace. People he hadn't taken yet. "He's still here," Tommy said, looking at the trees. Then we heard the voice from the woods. "I'm sorry about this, but I need to finish the count." The census man. We couldn't see him, but his voice carried clearly. "Where's my daughter?" Tommy shouted. "They're helping," he said, completing something that should have been finished long ago. "What do you want?" "I'm a collector. These mountains have kept too many people. I'm just balancing the books, taking back what the earth has taken, one for one." Then we heard footsteps, approaching through the trees. Too many footsteps. We backed toward the trucks as they emerged into our lights. Doreen appeared first, face blank, eyes reflecting like an animal's. Then Billy, then Amber, head tilted unnaturally. They walked past us toward the sedan. Behind them came others. People in decades-old clothes, skin pale and waxy, moving in synchronized silence. At least 20 of them, emerging from the woods. In a silent procession, the ones the mountains kept, a voice said behind us. We spun. The census man stood there, lantern held low. He looked tired, apologetic. "1 for 1.
Give me 3.
I returned 3. That's how it's always worked. "Who are you?" "I'm the balance. I've been coming to these mountains longer than your people have lived here. Whenever the debt gets too high, I come to collect." Tommy lunged at him. Pass right through like smoke. We left the holler that night. Most of us packed what we could and drove to family in other counties. Some stayed. 2 more disappeared over the next week. I went back once. A month later, the holler was empty. Every house abandoned, doors hanging open. But on each door was a small square of paper. Census forms, filled out in neat handwriting. And at the bottom of each, a single word. Counted. I don't know where the census man is now. But sometimes I get official-looking mail at my new address. I never open it, because I know if I looked inside, I'd see my name in neat handwriting. And I'd know that eventually, one way or another, the census man always completes his count. My uncle's hunting cabin in North Carolina doesn't exist on any map, and after last December, I understand why. Uncle Ray built it in the 90s, deep in Pisgah National Forest, up a fire road that barely qualified as passable. No power, no neighbors, 20 miles from civilization. Just a 1-room cabin with a wood stove. He'd go every hunting season, come back with stories about the pressing silence. I inherited it when he died in November 2024. Decided to spend Christmas there alone to escape my divorce. I packed supplies for 2 weeks and drove up December 22nd. The drive was brutal. Fire road washed out in places, overgrown in others. By the time I reached the cabin at dark, snow was falling. Heavy flakes that meant business. The cabin was smaller than I'd imagined, barely more than a shed, but it was solid. I started a fire and settled in. The silence Ray had mentioned was real, not peaceful. Heavy, like something pushing against the walls. I woke after midnight to singing. multiple voices in harmony. The melody was unfamiliar, beautiful in a way that made your chest ache. It came from the valley below, echoing through trees, clear despite the snow. I went to the window. Down in the valley, maybe a quarter mile away, I saw lights. Soft blue-white glow emanating from the ground, illuminating the snow from below. In that glow, shapes moved, human-sized, swaying in rhythm. I put on my boots and coat, grabbed my flashlight, and walked out. The singing got louder as I descended. The voices were clearer now, actual words in a language I couldn't understand. Old, pre-English, flowing syllables that blended with the wind. The light grew brighter. I reached the clearing and stopped. Figures stood in a perfect circle around a massive oak. They wore white, or something like white, because their edges blurred and shifted like they weren't entirely solid. Faces tilted upward, mouths open. The snow that fell on them didn't accumulate, but was absorbed, pulled into their bodies, adding to their glow. They looked human, mostly, but wrong. Proportions slightly off, movements too fluid, and the singing was the most beautiful and terrible thing I'd ever heard. One noticed me. Its head snapped in my direction. The singing stopped. The silence that followed was worse than any sound. The figure glided toward me, feet not quite touching ground. As it got closer, I saw its face. A woman, maybe 30s, delicate features but somehow vacant, like a beautiful mask with nothing behind it. She opened her mouth and spoke in that strange language, then switched to English. "You hear us?" "Most cannot. Most walk these mountains, and their ears are closed, but you hear." "What are you?" "We are the choir. We sing the snow, we sing the silence, we sing the spaces between things. This is our season. What do you want?" "We want nothing. We simply are. But you have come at the right time. The circle is incomplete. We need a 13th to close it, to complete the song." She extended her hand. "Join us. Feel what it is to be part of eternal music." I stepped back. "What happened to the last 13th?" Her smile faded. "He left. They always leave eventually. The human heart cannot sustain the song. It burns too bright, consumes too much. But for a season or two, they sing, and it is glorious. What happens when I want to leave? You will leave when the season changes, when warmth returns and snow melts. Changed, certainly. Emptied, perhaps, but alive." She turned and glided. "Back?" They reformed their circle. The singing resumed. I ran back to the cabin, locked the door, built up the fire, tried to drown out the singing with music, but my phone died. The singing continued all night, calling, always calling. I tried to stay, but the singing came every night. Each night it got harder to resist. On the 4th night, I caught myself halfway down the trail before realizing what I was doing. I'd left the cabin without conscious decision, drawn by the music. On the 5th night, I decided to leave. Packed at dawn, but when the singing stopped, I couldn't turn the key. The silence was worse. Expectant, waiting. Leaving felt like breaking an unspoken promise. That night I walked down to the circle, not to join, just to watch. The woman smiled. "You've decided, just to watch," I said quickly. "Understanding combs through participation," she said, but she didn't press. I sat outside the circle in the snow and watched them sing. I did this every remaining night, never joining but singing along, humming, learning patterns. On my last night, December 31st, She approached again. "You're leaving tomorrow." "Yes, you could stay. Complete the circle. Just for one season." I was so tempted, but I thought about what she'd said. Emptied, perhaps? Changed? No. "Thank you, but no." She nodded. "Then go. Leave before the season turns. If you stay past Nathal, you won't resist. The song becomes part of you, and boundaries dissolve." I left the next morning. Put the cabin up for sale, but no one's made an offer. People who visit turn around, saying something felt wrong. I still hear the singing. Sometimes, late at night. Faint, distant, more memory than sound, but I know it's real. Every winter, when snow falls in that valley, 13 figures appear beneath an oak. 12 of them, anyway. The 13th spot remains empty, waiting. And I wonder, on bad nights, how long I can resist before I drive back up, walk down to the valley, and take my place in the circle. Because it will win eventually. Once you've heard it, really heard it, it never leaves. It becomes part of the silence inside you, growing louder each year, until one day you wake up humming it in your sleep, and then you know it's time. Time to join the choir. Time to sing until there's nothing left but light and melody and the endless, terrible beauty of the snow. There's a stretch of the Blue Ridge Parkway between mileposts 217 and 218 where people leave diaries, and I found out why we're not supposed to read them. January 11th this year. I'm a park ranger, 6 years now. My job involves driving the parkway. In winter, checking for damage. Mindless work, hours alone. But that day, I found fresh tire tracks at an unmarked pull-off between mileposts 217 and 218. The parkway was closed. Gates locked. I should have been the only vehicle up here. The tracks showed someone had parked and walked down a short trail. I followed the footprints 50 yards into the forest to a small clearing. In the center was a stone structure, roughly circular, 4 feet tall. Inside, protected from weather, was a pile of notebooks. At least 30, various sizes, each with a date on the cover. The earliest said March 1984. The most recent, January 10th, 2025. Yesterday I picked up the newest one. The handwriting was shaky, rushed. "My name is David Yoon. I'm from Charlotte. I found this place by accident." I read the older diaries. And now I understand? I understand I'll come back. The pattern continues. If you're reading this, you're already part of it. Don't read the others. Leave now, please. The diary documented his thoughts over a single day, increasingly paranoid. The final entry, 4:47 p.m. I have to go back. It's not done yet. I should have left, but I was curious. I picked up another. June 1997. A woman named Sarah from Asheville. Same story. Found the clearing, read diaries, tried to leave, kept coming back. Her entries spanned 3 weeks, handwriting deteriorating. Last entry. It wants me to document the others so the next person understands faster, so they realize sooner they're trapped. The record is never complete. There's always room for one more. I picked up the oldest. March 1984. A man named Thomas. He'd found the structure empty, started a diary as a message in a bottle. For 2 weeks, his entries were thoughtful, optimistic. Then something changed. He talked about the clearing's intention, about feeling something, pay attention when he wrote. Final entry. I've realized what this is. A trap. A patient trap. It makes you curious, makes you read, makes you write, and you become part of what caught you. I'm going to burn these diaries, destroy the structure. But the structure wasn't destroyed. Thomas had failed. Now there were 30 diaries instead of one. I spent 3 hours reading, watching the pattern emerge. Each person found it by accident. Each read at least one diary. Each tried to leave and couldn't. Each came back, compelled to add to the record. Some tried to warn future readers. Some tried to map the pattern. Some descended into paranoia. But all came back. All kept writing. All added to the collection, ensuring the next person would be drawn in. By the time I looked up, it was dark. I'd been there 3 hours, had read maybe a dozen diaries, and I felt it. The pull David mentioned, the certainty I'd come back, that I'd had my own diary, that I was part of the pattern now. I ran, drove straight to the ranger station, filed a report. My supervisor said she'd investigate. 2 days later, she called me in. The investigation team found the pull-off, the trail, the clearing, but no stone structure, no sign it had ever been there. They thought I'd imagined it. My supervisor suggested I'd take time off, maybe talk to a counselor. I took 2 weeks off, tried to convince myself it was a hallucination. On January 28th, I drove back. The stone structure was there, exactly where it had been, solid and real. The diaries had grown. A new one sat on top, dated January 15th. My supervisor's handwriting. My name is Janet Kerrigan. I've been a ranger 22 years. Last week, my team member reported finding this structure. I didn't believe him, but I had to check. I found it. I've been reading for hours. I understand now. I understand. I'll tell him the investigation found nothing. I'll recommend time off. This is how it works. The pattern protects itself. People who find it are discredited until they accept they're part of it. Something about this place demands documentation. If you're reading this, you know. You feel it. The pull. The certainty you'll come back. That you'll add your story. I don't know how many of us there are, but I know I'll be back tomorrow and the day after until I fill this diary and start another. I'm writing this from the clearing now. 2 weeks since I found Janet's diary. I've come every day. Started my own diary. I know I'll keep coming back. I know eventually someone else will find this place, will read these words, will become part of the pattern. And when they do, I'll be compelled to discredit them, to send investigations to empty coordinates, to protect the pattern even though I hate it. Because that's how it works. The pattern uses us to sustain itself. We become its guardians and prisoners, documenting our own captivity, warning others while simultaneously drawing them in. If you're reading this, turn around. Leave now. Don't read the diaries. But I know you won't listen. I know you're already wondering what the others wrote. I know because I was you once, standing here, holding a diary, telling myself I could read one more. That was 43 diaries ago. That was yesterday. That was 3 years from now. Time doesn't work right here. The pattern doesn't care about time. It only cares about continuation. And now you're part of it. Welcome to the record. We've been waiting. There's always room for one more. My grandmother's Virginia mountain house moved up the ridge 20 feet every winter, and by the time we realized it, she'd moved with it. Mamo Ida's place had stood on Copper Ridge since 1923, built by my great-grandfather with timber from the summit. 2-story farmhouse, weathered but solid. She'd refused every offer to move somewhere more accessible. "This house knows me," she'd say. "We're staying put." Except they weren't staying put. My father was the first to notice. Each visit, the drive seemed longer, the house farther up. In fall 2023, he brought a GPS unit and marked coordinates. When he returned in January 2024, the house was 63 feet higher in elevation. We had a family meeting. My uncle dismissed it. GPS units weren't accurate in mountains. My aunt suggested he'd marked the wrong spot, but my father was certain. He'd taken photographs using landmarks for reference. In fall photos, the house was partially obscured by an oak tree. In winter photos, the house was visible above the tree's canopy. Unless the tree had shrunk, the house had moved. I went with him in February to verify. We took multiple GPS units, measuring tapes, stakes, to mark reference points. The drive was treacherous, frozen, and rutted. When we reached the house, Mama Ida stood on the porch watching us with an expression I couldn't read. Not surprised, just watchful. She was 94, small and bird-boned, but sharp. The house felt different, present in a way houses normally aren't. Walls closer, ceilings lower, like it was watching. We spent the afternoon taking measurements, marking stakes down the slope, photographing everything. Over dinner, my father explained his findings. The house had moved. He showed coordinates, photos, measurements. She listened without comment, eyes fixed past our shoulders. When he finished, she nodded. "I know. Known for a while now." "Why didn't you tell us?" I asked. What was I going to say? You'd have thought I'd gone senile. She walked to the window, looking toward the summit. This house was built with wood. From up there, Daddy felled a dozen old-growth poplars right near the top. He used to say the trees wanted to go back, that he could hear them groaning at night. I thought it was just talk. But then I started noticing the view changing, distance to the spring getting longer. About 20 years ago, I started marking the ridge with cairns. Every spring they were lower relative to the house. The house was climbing. "Why didn't you move?" my father asked. "Couldn't." Tried in 2009. Packed a bag, made it to the valley floor. Then I felt it pulling. Not physical, but like a string attached to my sternum. The farther I got, the worse it felt. Like tearing apart. I turned around. Haven't tried since. She faced us. "This house is going home, and I'm part of it now. Been part of it since before I noticed. I think Daddy was too. The house claimed him. Now it's claimed me." We stayed that night. Neither of us slept. Around 3 a.m., I heard deep creaking, rhythmic and purposeful, like the house breathing. I looked. Out the window. The stakes we'd hammered were farther away. The house was moving. I watched for an hour. By dawn, it had climbed another 10 feet. We tried to convince her to leave. All 4 of us in April, taking turns with every argument. She listened patiently, then asked us to stay for lunch. After, my aunt tried once more. "Mama, something's wrong. You need to come with us." "Nothing's wrong. House is just going home." "And I'm going with it." "What happens when it reaches the top?" I asked. She looked at me with pity. "Same thing that happened to Daddy. We become part of the mountain, part of the old trees that never should have been cut. We get to go back." We visited once more in June. By then the house was at the summit, nestled among ancient trees with trunks wide as cars. The house had changed. Wood siding had the texture of bark. Windows looked glassy and resinous, like tree sap. Mama Ida had changed too, skin gray-brown and rough. Fingers elongated and knobby, skin splitting to reveal something harder. Her teeth looked wooden. "Almost there," she said, voice creaking like wind through branches. We sat with her for an hour, drinking tea that tasted like pine needles. When we left, she didn't get up, just waved from her rocking chair, still smiling that wooden smile. In September, my father hiked up to check. The house was gone. The summit looked like it always had, old growth stretching everywhere. No foundation, no debris. Just trees with bark that looked almost like weathered siding if you squinted, branches creaking with a rhythm like rocking. Denny noticed one tree, slightly apart, with a split trunk forming a cavity. Inside was Mama Ida's rocking chair, grown into the tree or the tree grown around it. On the chair sat a photograph. My great-grandfather, 1923, standing before felled trees, smiling, axe in hand. We don't go up Copper Ridge anymore, but sometimes, late at night when the wind is right, we hear it, the creaking, the rhythmic sound of something massive settling into place, finding its rightful spot, and we wonder how many other houses on these ridges are climbing year by year, carrying their occupants back to wherever they came from. We wonder how long before it's our turn. There's an abandoned coal mine outside Lint, Kentucky that the locals won't talk about, and after what I found down there, I understand their silence. I'm a freelance journalist, spent last November researching a story about Appalachian ghost. Townsville was perfect. Population peaked at 10,000 in the 30s, cold boom days. Now maybe 700 people. I was staying at the only motel, interviewing old-timers about the mines. Every conversation hit the same wall. They'd talk about the glory days, the strikes, the closures, but mention Mine Shaft 7 and they'd go quiet. Change the subject, end the interview. Mine Shaft 7 wasn't on any map. I found reference to it in a 1952 newspaper article about an accident. 17 miners trapped in Shaft 7 collapse. Rescue. Efforts abandoned after 3 days. No follow-up articles. No memorial. Nothing. Like it had been scrubbed from history. The more people refused to talk, the more determined I became. Finally, a man named Hollis, 83, agreed to tell me. We met at a diner outside town. He leaned close, voice barely audible. Shaft 7 didn't collapse. They sealed it. Had to. Something came up from the deep tunnels. Something that wasn't coal. What was it? Don't know. Miners started disappearing. 1, 2 at a time. They'd be working, turn around, and someone was gone. No sound, no struggle, just gone. After a week, 12 men missing. Company sent in a rescue team. Only one came back up. Wouldn't talk. Just kept saying it's still down there. It's still hungry. Next day, he hung himself. He gave me rough directions. North Ridge, past the old processing plant. Trail marked by 3 rusted oil drums. Don't go in, he said. Whatever you think you'll find, it ain't worth it. I went the next morning. Found the trail. Followed it 2 miles to a boarded-up mine entrance. The boards were new, replaced within the last few years. Someone was maintaining this seal. I pried off enough boards to squeeze through. The tunnel was tight, reinforced with rotting timber, ceiling barely 6 feet. My headlamp cut a weak cone through absolute darkness. The air smelled like standing water and something else. Something? Organic and wrong. I followed the main shaft deeper, passing side tunnels that exhaled cold air. A half mile in, I found the first sign something was wrong. Scratches on the walls, deep gouges in the rock, running parallel in sets of 3, 2, wide for fingernails, 2 regular for mining tools. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber where multiple shafts converged. In the center was equipment. Old mining gear, lunch pails, boots, all arranged in a circle, like someone had laid them out deliberately. In the middle of the circle was a hole, not a shaft or tunnel, just a hole in the floor, maybe 3 feet across, dropping straight down into darkness. My headlamp couldn't find the bottom. That's when I heard it. From deep in the hole, a sound like breathing but not quite, wet and rasping, with a rhythm. That was almost but not quite human. I backed away. My light swept across the wall and I saw them. Messages? Scratched into the rock. It came up. Don't let it out. 17 went down. Nothing came back. And newest, carved in fresh rock. Still hungry. Still waiting. 2024. The breathing got louder. Closer. I realized it was coming up. I ran, hit the main tunnel at full. Sprint, didn't look back. Behind me, I heard something heavy moving through the shaft. Not footsteps. A dragging, scraping sound. And underneath it, that wet breathing, excited now, urgent. The entrance was 50 yards away. 40? 30? Something grabbed my ankle. I kicked hard. Connected with something that felt like leather over bone. Heard a sound like a growl mixed with a wheeze. My ankle came free. I dove through the entrance. Into daylight, rolled away from the opening and looked back. In the darkness of the tunnel, maybe 10 feet from the entrance, something crouched. I couldn't see it clearly. My mind refused to process what my eyes were seeing. Too many limbs, proportions that didn't make sense, and in the center, something that might have been a face but was mostly mouth. It stayed in the darkness, swaying, slightly, making that breathing sound. Then it spoke. Not words, just sound shaped like words, guttural and wrong. But I understood the meaning. Hungry, waiting, always waiting, always waiting. It retreated into the shaft. I heard it dragging itself back down, toward the hole, toward wherever it had come from. I drove straight out of Lynch. Didn't stop at the motel for my things. Just drove. I tried to write the story. Couldn't. Who would believe it? I contacted Hollis. He died 2 days after our conversation. Heart attack in his sleep. I've spent 3 months researching mineshaft. 7. Found 17 death certificates from 1952. But when I cross-referenced with Census records, those 17 men never existed. No birth certificates. No family records. Nothing. Like they'd been erased. Or like they'd never been real at all. Last week, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No text. Just an attachment. A photo of the boarded mine entrance. The boards were torn off. The entrance was open. And in the darkness inside, barely visible, something pale was emerging into daylight. I don't know what's happening in Lynch, Kentucky. I don't know what lived in Mineshaft 7, but I know it's out now. And I know it's still hungry. There's a rest stop on Highway 52 in West Virginia where the same family has been waiting for 48 hours. And I'm starting to think they're not waiting for anything at all. I'm a long-haul trucker. Been driving these routes for 15 years. You learn which stops are safe, which have good coffee, which to avoid after dark. But I'd never stopped at mile marker 127 before. It wasn't on my usual route. A detour around construction sent me down Highway 52 on a freezing February night. And by 2 a.m. I needed coffee and a bathroom break. The rest stop was one of those old state-maintained facilities. Single building with restrooms, vending machines, a few picnic tables under a pavilion. One security light barely illuminating the parking lot. When I pulled in, there was only one other vehicle. A minivan, early 2000s model, parked under the pavilion, and sitting at the picnic table was a family. Mother, father, 2 kids, maybe 8 and 10 years old. They were just sitting there in the cold, hands folded on the table, staring straight ahead at nothing. I thought it was weird, but not alarming. Maybe their car broke down, waiting for a tow truck. I went inside, used the facilities, got coffee from the machine. When I came back out, they hadn't moved. Same positions, same blank stares. The kids weren't fidgeting, weren't on phones, weren't doing anything. Just sitting. I walked over. "You folks okay? Need help with your vehicle?" The father's head turned toward me slowly. Too slowly, like his neck was rusty. "We're waiting," he said. His voice was flat, emotionless. Waiting for what? For it to be time. The mother and kids hadn't moved, hadn't even blinked. "Time for what?" I asked. He turned his head back to the original position, staring straight ahead. "You should go. It's not time yet." I went back to my truck, but something felt wrong. I pulled up the CB radio and called out to see if anyone else was on 52. A voice crackled back. "Another trucker? Maybe 20 miles north?" I asked if he knew. "About the rest stop at mile marker 127. "Oh yeah," he said. "And the family stop. They're always there. Always. Every time I pass through, last 6 months or so. Same family. Same spot." Thought they were mannequins at first, some weird art project. But they're real. They move sometimes, blink, just real slow. "Has anyone called the police?" "Sure. Cops came out twice that I know of. Families said they were fine, just resting. Can't arrest people for sitting at a public rest stop." Cops left. Family's still there. I should have left right then. But I couldn't stop thinking about those kids. About how wrong they looked. I walked back over. This time I approached from behind, got close enough to see detail. The mother's skin had a waxy quality, like it wasn't sitting right on her bones. The father's eyes didn't track properly, like they were looking at 2 different points. And the kids, God, the kids had this gray pallor that made them look like corpses, but they were breathing. Slow, synchronized breaths. "How long have you been here?" I asked. The mother spoke this time, same flat tone. 2 days, 48 hours. Soon it will be time. "Time for what?" "Please, let me help you. Let me call someone." The daughter turned her head toward me. The movement was jerky, unnatural. When she spoke, her voice didn't sound like a child's. It sounded old, ancient. "We're waiting for the others. We're the anchor. We hold the door." "What door?" All 4 of them turned to look at me simultaneously. Their movements perfectly synchronized. The son pointed at the restroom building. "The door opens every 7 years. At the place between places, where travelers pass but never stay. We hold it closed. We've been holding it closed since 1977. I looked at the building. It was just concrete blocks and bad fluorescent lighting. Nothing special. Nothing sinister. But as I stared, I noticed something. The shadows inside were moving, flowing, like something was pacing back and forth behind the walls. "What's behind the door?" I asked. The father stood up. For the first time, I saw how tall he was. 7 feet easy. His proportions were wrong. "Arms too long. You should leave now. It's almost time. When the door opens, travelers need to be far away, or they become part of what comes through." I backed away toward my truck. All 4 of them were standing now, facing the building. The security light flickered. In that moment of darkness, I saw shapes, dozens of them, standing in the parking lot, all around the rest stop. When the light came back on, they were gone. I got in my truck and drove. Didn't stop for 6 hours. Straight, not until I was 3 states away. I called the state police the next day, reported what I'd seen. They said they'd check it out. 3 days later, I got a call back. The officers said they'd found the rest stop empty. No family, no minivan. But they'd found something else. Behind the restroom building, they'd found a door. Not a regular door. A metal hatch, set into the concrete foundation, leading down into darkness. It hadn't been on the original building plans. No one knew it was there. They were sending a team to investigate. That was 4 weeks ago. I haven't heard anything since. I've tried calling the officer back. Numbers disconnected. I've searched online for news about the rest stop. Nothing. Like the whole thing never happened. But last week, I had to run a route that took me near Highway 52. I didn't take it. Took a 2-hour detour instead, because a buddy of mine, another trucker, called me and said he'd stopped at mile marker 127. Said there was a family there. Mother, father, 2 kids, sitting at the picnic table. When he asked if they needed help, the father said, "We're waiting. We're the new anchor. The door opens in 6 years, 11 months, and 23 days. And when my buddy looked at the restroom building, he saw something carved into the concrete. Fresh carvings, names and dates going back to 1977. Dozens of families, all of them anchors, all of them waiting, all of them holding something back that the rest of us should pray never gets through." There's a roadside memorial on Route 19 in North Carolina that gets fresh flowers every day. But the person it's for didn't die in an accident. I'm a highway maintenance worker for the state. Part of my job involves checking and cleaning roadside memorials. Most of them are tragic. Car accidents, motorcycle crashes, places where people lost loved ones. We don't remove them unless they become hazardous or the family requests it. We just make sure they're not blocking sight lines or creating distractions. In January, I noticed a new memorial on Route 19 between Burnsville and Spruce Pine. White cross, about 3 feet tall, planted in the shoulder. Plastic flowers in a vase. A laminated photo of a young woman, maybe 25, with a name and dates. Emma Grace Holbrook, 1998 to 2024. Forever watching over this road. I made a note of it. Checked accident reports. There was no record of any fatal accident at that. Location. Not in 2024. Not ever. I figured maybe she died somewhere else and the family chose this spot because it was meaningful. It happens sometimes. But then I noticed something strange. Every day when I drove past, the flowers were different. Fresh ones. Someone was replacing them daily. After a week, I stopped to look closer. The flowers were fresh cut, not store-bought. Wildflowers mostly. Mountain laurel, black-eyed Susans. the kind you pick from the roadside. And the photo had changed. It was the same woman, but a different picture. Still laminated, but a different pose, different background. I came back the next day. Different photos again. Same woman, different image. This time she was pointing at something off camera, her expression urgent. The flowers were fresh again. Roses this time. Definitely not wildflowers. I decided to stake it out. Parked my truck up the road and waited. Around 3 a.m., a figure approached the memorial. Woman middle-aged, carrying flowers. She knelt, replaced the old flowers with new ones, swapped out the photo, and stayed kneeling for maybe 5 minutes. Then she stood and walked away. Didn't have a car. Just walked up the mountain into the woods. I followed at a distance. She walked for maybe a mile up an old logging road, then disappeared into a cabin. Lights came on inside. I approached carefully, knocked on the door. The woman answered. Her eyes were red from crying. "Can I help you?" "Ma'am, I'm with highway maintenance. I've noticed you've been tending a memorial on Route 19. I wanted to make sure everything was okay." Her face crumpled. "You've seen Emma?" "The memorial, yes. I'm very sorry for your loss. Can I ask what happened?" She invited me in. The cabin was filled with photos of Emma. Hundreds of them. Every wall covered. "Emma didn't die in a car accident," she said. "She was taken 3 months ago. She was driving home from work, Route 19, around 8 p.m. She called me, said there was a man standing in the road. She was going to stop and see if he needed help. That was the last I heard from her. Her car was found the next morning, parked on the shoulder right where the memorial is now. Door open, engine running, phone on the seat, still connected to our call. But Emma was gone? Did the police investigate? Of course. They searched for weeks. Found nothing. No evidence of foul play. No signs of struggle. They think she wandered off, maybe had a mental health crisis. But I know my daughter. She didn't wander off. Something took her, and she's still there. What do you mean she's still? There. The woman pulled out her phone and showed me photos. Dozens of them, all taken at the memorial site. At first, they looked like normal photos. The cross, the flowers. But when she zoomed in, I saw it. In the background, barely visible. In the trees, a figure. A woman. Emma. She was standing in the tree line, watching the road. Different position in each photo. Sometimes closer. Sometimes farther back. Always watching. She's trapped there, the woman said. Whatever took her, it's keeping her there. I can see her sometimes, late at night, standing by the road. She's trying to warn people. That's why I changed the photo. She's showing me what's coming. What's coming? The man? The one she stopped for? He's still there. Still standing in the road. Still waiting for someone else to stop. Emma's trying to warn them, but no one can see her except me. And it's happening again. Last week, another car was found. Same spot, door open, engine running. A man named David Porter. Gone, no trace. I checked the reports. She was right. David Porter, 42, missing. Car found on Route 19. Same exact location. I went back to the memorial that night. Brought a good camera. Set up and waited. Around 11 p.m., headlights approached. A sedan slowed down. I could see why. There was a man standing in the road. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like clothes from another era. The sedan stopped. The driver's window rolled down. I started running toward them, shouting, waving my flashlight. The driver saw me and sped away, swerving around the man. I got close enough to see his face. He didn't look human. The features were right, but empty. Like a mask. He turned toward me and smiled. Then he was gone. Not walked away. Just gone. But Emma was there, standing at her memorial. I could see her clearly now. She was transparent, fading in and out, but she was there. She was pointing at the woods, pointing at something I couldn't see. I took photos with my camera. Dozens of them. When I reviewed them later, I saw it. Deep in the woods, dozens of figures, all standing motionless, all watching the road, all of them people who'd stopped, all of them trapped, all of them waiting to warn the next person. But the warnings never work, because when you see someone standing in the road at night, your first instinct is to help, and that's exactly what it wants. I filed a report with my supervisor. Recommended. We put up warning signs, barriers, anything to keep people from stopping. He laughed it off, called it small-town superstition. But Emma's mother keeps changing the photos, and every few weeks, another car is found. Door open, engine running, driver gone. Emma stands at her memorial, trying to warn them. She's been trying for 3 months, and she'll keep trying. Forever. Because whatever took her won't let her go. It needs her there. Needs her to be bait. The caring daughter who stopped to help. Now she's the lure that makes others stop. And every time someone disappears, another figure joins her in the woods. Another warning that no one heeds. Another voice screaming silently from the trees while something that looks like a man stands in the road, waiting for headlights, waiting for someone kind enough to stop. I don't drive Route 19 anymore, and I tell everyone I know, if you see someone standing in the road at night, don't stop. Don't slow down. Just drive. Because Emma is still there, still watching, still trying to save you. But she can't. No one can. The road takes what it wants, and it's always hungry.